The crisp morning air bit at the hunter's cheeks as he made his way through the dense forest. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. He had been hunting in these woods for over 20 years, knowing every trail and tree like the back of his hand. But today felt different somehow. The leaves crunched softly under his boots as he followed a set of fresh deer tracks. He'd been tracking this particular buck for the past week, and today seemed promising. The morning dew still clung to the grass, making it easier to spot where animals had recently passed through. Just as he was about to cross a small clearing, something unusual caught his eye. There, tied to a massive old oak tree, was a German shepherd. The hunter froze in his tracks, confused by the sight. In all his years of hunting in these remote woods, he'd never encountered anything like this. The dog looked up at him with intelligent eyes, its tail giving a cautious wag. It wasn't acting aggressive or fearful, just waiting. The hunter noticed right away that this wasn't some abandoned stray. The dog's coat was well groomed, and it wore what looked like an expensive leather leash that secured it to the tree. "Hey there, buddy," the hunter said softly, slowly approaching the dog. "What are you doing way out here?" The nearest town was at least 15 miles away, and these woods weren't exactly a popular spot for hiking or camping, especially not this deep in. As he got closer, he noticed more details that made his skin prickle with unease. There were 2 bowls near the dog, one for water and one for food. Both looked relatively fresh, the water still clear and the food barely touched. Someone had been here recently, but why would they leave their dog behind? The German shepherd stood up as the hunter approached, its tail now wagging more confidently. It was clear the dog was used to people and well-trained. When the hunter got close enough to check its collar, he found a name tag with an address that made him frown. The address was from a town over 50 miles away. Something wasn't adding up. The hunter had been in these woods just yesterday evening, covering this same area while scouting for deer. This dog and its supplies hadn't been here then. Someone had come during the night or very early morning to leave the dog here. But why? Looking around more carefully now, the hunter noticed other signs that raised more questions. There were multiple sets of footprints in the soft earth around the tree, some of them showing a strange dragging pattern, as if something heavy had been moved through the area. The dog whined softly, drawing the hunter's attention back. It was staring intently in a particular direction, ears forward and alert. Years of hunting had taught him to pay attention to animal behavior. They often noticed things humans missed. Moving closer to examine the ground where the dog was looking, the hunter discovered something that made him pause. The undergrowth had been disturbed in a way that suggested regular foot traffic, but someone had tried to conceal it. Broken branches had been carefully arranged to hide a narrow path, and leaves had been scattered to cover shoe prints. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as he realized this was no simple case of someone abandoning their pet. Everything about the situation felt deliberate. The dog's placement, the hidden trail, the fresh supplies. This was something else entirely. The German shepherd continued to stare down that concealed path, occasionally looking back at the hunter as if trying to communicate something important. Its behavior wasn't random or panicked, it seemed to have a purpose. Checking his cell phone, the hunter was relieved to see he had a signal, weak but present. His gut was telling him this situation needed proper authorities. 20 years in these woods had given him a sixth sense about danger, and right now, every instinct was telling him he'd stumbled onto something bigger than a lost dog. The morning that had started as a simple hunting trip had turned into something far more mysterious. As he dialed the local sheriff's office, the hunter couldn't shake the feeling that finding this dog was just the beginning of a much larger story. The German shepherd sat watching him, its intelligent eyes seeming to say it had been waiting for someone to find it, waiting to reveal whatever secret lay hidden in these familiar woods that suddenly felt very different. The local sheriff's office responded quickly to the hunter's call. While waiting for them to arrive, he decided to take a closer look at the dog and its surroundings, being careful not to disturb any potential evidence. The German shepherd seemed relieved to have company, occasionally nuzzling the hunter's hand when he got close enough. The food in the bowl looked like premium quality dog kibble, not the kind you'd typically find in local stores. The water was fresh and clean, with droplets still visible on the sides of the metal bowl. Someone had definitely been here within the last few hours, probably before sunrise. Looking more closely at the dog's collar, the The hunter noticed it wasn't just any regular collar. It was made of high-quality leather with a special tag that included not just an address, but also a QR code. Unfortunately, the poor cell signal in the woods meant he couldn't scan it. The tag also had the dog's name engraved in elegant script, along with a phone number that, when he tried calling it, went straight to voicemail. The sound of approaching vehicles made both the hunter and the dog look up. 2 patrol cars were making their way down the old logging road that ran about a quarter-mile from their location. The hunter pulled out his bright orange hunting vest and waved it above his head to signal their location. 2 deputies emerged from their vehicles, equipment belts jingling as they made their way through the underbrush. The older of the 2, who had deep laugh lines around his eyes, took one look at the scene and let out a low whistle. "Well, this sure isn't something you see every day," he said, pulling out a small notebook. The hunter explained everything he'd noticed: the hidden path, the fresh supplies, the multiple footprints, and the strange dragging marks in the soil. As he talked, the younger deputies circled the area, taking photos with a department-issued camera. "Look at this," the younger deputy called out, pointing to something near the base of the oak tree. Hidden beneath some scattered leaves was a small piece of paper, partially buried in the dirt. Using a pen, he carefully lifted it out. It was a receipt from a gas station dated just 2 days ago, from a town about 30 miles north. The German Shepherd became increasingly animated as more people gathered around, its tail wagging faster as it looked repeatedly toward the hidden path. The older deputy noticed this behavior too. "That dog's trying to tell us something," he said, watching as the animal strained slightly against its leash in that direction. Following proper procedure, they took photos of everything before touching any evidence. The younger deputy gently removed the leather leash from the tree, but left it attached to the dog's collar. The moment it was free, the German Shepherd began walking purposefully toward the concealed path, looking back as if asking them to follow. "Hold on there, boy," the older deputy said, taking hold of the leash. He pulled out his radio and called for additional backup, including a K9 unit. "Whatever's going on here, we're going to do this by the book." While they waited, the hunter shared his knowledge of the area with the deputies. He'd been hunting these woods for decades and knew about old logging camps, abandoned miners' cabins, and natural caves scattered throughout the region. But this particular spot had never shown any signs of human activity before, at least not until now. The German Shepherd sat quietly but remained alert, its eyes never leaving the hidden path. Every few minutes, it would let out a soft whine, as if trying to communicate the urgency of its message to the humans around it. More patrol cars arrived, along with a K9 unit. The police dog, a Belgian Malinois, immediately showed interest in the same direction the German Shepherd had been indicating. Its handler noted that the dog was displaying signs of detecting human scent trails, recent ones. As law enforcement set up a proper perimeter, the hunter couldn't help but feel that his simple hunting trip had led to something much bigger. The German Shepherd's presence here wasn't random. It was like a deliberate clue left in the woods, waiting to be found by someone who would notice that something wasn't right. The morning sun now hung higher in the sky, burning away the early mist, but the atmosphere around the old oak tree remained heavy with tension and unanswered questions. Whatever secret lay down that hidden path, they were about to find out, and somehow, this well-cared-for dog tied to a tree was the key to unlocking the whole mystery. The K9 unit took the lead as they followed the hidden path, with the German Shepherd walking alongside, still attached to its leather leash. The hunter stayed with the group, his knowledge of the terrain proving valuable as they made their way through the dense forest. The morning had warmed up, but beneath the thick canopy of trees, the air remained cool and damp. Every few yards, they found more signs that this path was regularly used. Broken twigs had been carefully arranged to look natural, and leaves had been scattered to cover boot prints. But to trained eyes, the signs were obvious. Someone had worked hard to keep this trail hidden. The German Shepherd's behavior changed as they walked deeper into the woods. Its ears perked up and its steps became more purposeful. The police dog showed similar signs of alertness, indicating they were getting close to something significant. After about 15 minutes of careful walking, the path took a sharp turn around a large boulder. What they found there made everyone stop in their tracks. Partially hidden by thick vegetation and years of forest growth was the entrance to what looked like an old mine shaft. But unlike the abandoned mines that dotted these hills, this one showed signs of recent use. A modern padlock secured a heavy steel gate across the entrance. Fresh boot prints marked the ground around it, and even more telling was the thin cable running along the ground, too new to be from the mine's original operations. The cable disappeared into the shaft, suggesting it was providing power to something inside. One of the deputies photographed everything while another radioed for additional support. They needed specialized equipment and properly trained personnel to safely investigate an old mine shaft. The hunter pointed out something else interesting: fresh tire tracks a little way off, hidden behind a stand of young trees. There was a narrow path there, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for, wide enough for an ATV or small utility vehicle. The German Shepherd became increasingly agitated near the mine entrance, pawing at the ground and whining softly. Its behavior caught everyone's attention. This wasn't just random anxiety. The dog seemed to recognize this place. The T9 unit handler noticed something else. His police dog was indicating the presence of multiple human scents, something very recent. "Someone's been here within the last few hours," he said, watching his dog's behavior carefully. "Maybe even more recently than that." As they waited for additional units to arrive, the hunter shared what he knew about the old mines in the area. Most had been shut down over 50 years ago when the ore ran out. Some had been properly sealed, but others were just abandoned. This one wasn't on any of his hunting maps, which was strange because he had detailed surveys of the entire area. A soft breeze blew from the mine entrance, carrying a strange smell, a mix of dampness and something chemical that didn't belong in these woods. The German Shepherd's reactions grew stronger when the wind blew from that direction, suggesting it recognized the scents coming from inside. More officers arrived, including a team specifically trained for mine investigations. They'd brought special equipment to test the air quality and structural stability before anyone could safely enter. The whole scene had transformed from a simple morning hunting trip into what looked like a major police operation. The German Shepherd sat alert, watching everything with intelligent eyes. Its behavior had changed from anxious to almost expectant, as if it knew that help had finally arrived. The hunter couldn't shake the feeling that this dog hadn't been left here by accident. It was deliberately placed where someone would find it, like a signal asking for help. As the investigation team set up their equipment, the morning quiet was broken by the distant sound of a helicopter. Whatever was hidden in this old mine shaft was important enough to bring in serious resources. The hunter watched as more vehicles arrived, including unmarked cars with official-looking people in them. The German Shepherd's discovery had opened the door to something much bigger than anyone had expected. What had started with a dog tied to a tree was quickly becoming one of the largest operations these woods had ever seen. And somehow, everyone knew this was just the beginning of what they would find in that old mine shaft. The special mine investigation team worked quickly to check if the tunnel was safe to enter. They used modern equipment to test the air quality and make sure the old support beams could still hold the weight of the rock above. After about an hour of careful checking, they confirmed it was safe enough to go inside, though everyone would need to wear protective gear. The old padlock was cut off, and the steel gate creaked open. The entrance revealed a tunnel that looked nothing like an abandoned mine should. Instead of old, rotting timber supports, they found newly installed metal beams. The dirt floor had been covered with wooden planks to make it easier to walk on, and modern electrical cables ran along the walls, powering LED lights that lit up the tunnel. The German Shepherd pulled eagerly at its leash, clearly wanting to lead the way inside. The T9 unit handler noticed this and spoke to his superior. "This dog knows something," he said. "It's not just acting on instinct, it's trying to show us something specific." A small team went in first, including 2 mine experts and 3 officers. They kept in radio contact with the team outside, describing everything they saw. The hunter listened intently as they reported their findings. The tunnel went straight into the hillside for about 50 yards before opening into a larger chamber. What they found in that chamber made everyone's jaw drop. It had been turned into some kind of underground base. There were generators humming quietly in one corner, powering not just the lights but also what looked like sophisticated computer equipment. Tables lined the walls, covered with maps, documents, and several laptop computers. But what caught everyone's attention was the wall of monitors showing live feeds from cameras hidden throughout the forest. The hunter recognized many of the locations, trails he'd walked hundreds of times, never knowing he was being watched. Some cameras even showed the area where he'd found the dog just hours earlier. The German Shepherd's behavior became more excited when they discovered a small side tunnel. This passage led to another chamber, this one set up like a living space. There were cots, a small kitchen area, and storage boxes filled with enough supplies to last for weeks. Everything was neat and organized, suggesting that whoever used this place knew exactly what they were doing. The investigation team photographed everything, careful not to touch anything that might be important evidence. They found notebooks filled with detailed observations of the forest above, including times and dates of when people passed through certain areas. The hunter recognized his own movements in some of these notes, times when he'd been out tracking deer, all carefully recorded by whoever was watching. In another corner, they discovered something that made the whole situation even more serious. There were dozens of sealed containers with warning labels, the kind used for storing dangerous materials. The hazmat team was called in immediately to check them. Initial readings suggested they contained toxic waste, the kind that could cause serious harm to the environment if not handled properly. The German Shepherd led them to one final chamber, this one smaller than the others but perhaps the most important. It was set up like an office with filing cabinets and a desk covered in paperwork. But what made everyone stop and stare was the wall of photographs. They showed various people in business suits meeting in secret, exchanging packages, and handling those same toxic containers they just found. Among the photos, the team found something that explained the German Shepherd's presence. It was a picture of the dog with its owner, a man wearing the jacket of a well-known environmental research company. The photo was dated just 3 months ago, right around the time when local news had reported the mysterious disappearance of an environmental scientist. As evidence teams continued to document everything, the scale of what they'd discovered began to sink in. This wasn't just some simple criminal operation, it was an elaborate scheme involving toxic waste disposal, corporate surveillance, and who knew what else. And somehow, a loyal dog tied to a tree had led them right to it. The hunter stood at the mine entrance, watching as more specialized units arrived. He couldn't help but think about how different this day had turned out from his usual morning hunting routine. The German Shepherd sat beside him, calmer now but still alert, as if knowing its mission wasn't quite complete yet. As the investigation continued into the afternoon, state-level environmental crime units arrived at the scene. The German Shepherd remained calm but watchful, its eyes constantly scanning the area as if it knew there was still more to discover. The investigating teams had begun piecing together the story behind this hidden operation, and what they found was bigger than anyone had expected. The missing environmental researcher, they learned, had been investigating a series of unusual wildlife deaths in the area. Local streams had shown signs of contamination, and several deer had been found dead without any obvious cause. His research had led him to track the source of the pollution, which had brought him dangerously close to uncovering this illegal operation. Inside one of the filing cabinets, investigators found a thick folder containing detailed research notes. The handwriting matched that of the missing scientist. The notes described his growing suspicion about late-night activity in the forest and strange chemical smells near the streams. He had documented everything meticulously, including water samples and photographs of dead wildlife. The German Shepherd became particularly excited when the investigators opened a drawer containing personal items, a water bottle, a weathered notebook, and a familiar-looking jacket that matched the one in the photograph. The dog sniffed these items intensely, confirming what everyone suspected: these belonged to its owner. One of the investigators discovered a hidden compartment behind a loose panel in the wall. Inside were USB drives and memory cards, carefully labeled with dates and locations. When they plugged these into a secure laptop, they found hundreds of photographs and videos documenting the illegal dumping of toxic waste. The footage showed trucks arriving in the middle of the night, using the hidden ATV trail to access the mine. The most shocking discovery came when they decoded encrypted files found on one of the laptops. These contained financial records showing payments from several well-known companies to shell corporations. The numbers were staggering: millions of dollars paid to dispose of dangerous chemicals illegally, saving these companies the cost of proper waste management. The German Shepherd's behavior changed suddenly when they began examining a new section of the tunnel network. Its ears perked up and it began pulling strongly at the leash, leading them toward a passage they hadn't yet explored. The dog's reaction was so strong that the canine handler recommended following its lead. This new tunnel was different from the others, newer, with fresh tool marks on the walls. The air felt different here, and the police dog also showed signs of picking up human scents. As they moved deeper, they could hear a faint humming sound, different from the generators in the main chamber. The passage led to a heavy door, carefully concealed and locked with an electronic keypad. The German Shepherd scratched at the floor near the door, whining with increasing urgency. The behavior was clear. Whatever lay beyond this door was what the dog had been trying to lead them to all along. Technical experts worked on bypassing the door's security while everyone waited tensely. The German Shepherd sat focused on the door, occasionally making soft whimpering sounds. Its whole demeanor suggested that something, or someone, important was on the other side. The experts managed to unlock the door, revealing a startling truth about the operation's scale. This wasn't just about illegal waste disposal, it was about silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. The room beyond held monitoring equipment far more sophisticated than what they'd found in the main chamber. Screens showed camera feeds from various public locations, suggesting they had been tracking multiple people who might have posed a threat to their operation. As investigators documented this new discovery, the German Shepherd's behavior became even more intense. There was still something else, something deeper in the complex that the loyal dog was trying to show them, and everyone present had the growing feeling that they were about to uncover the biggest revelation of all. The German Shepherd's excitement grew as the team moved deeper into the newly discovered section of the mine. The dog's tail wagged frantically, and it pulled harder on its leash, leading them down a narrow corridor that branched off from the surveillance room. The police team moved carefully, checking every step while following the dog's lead. A faint sound echoed through the tunnel, something that could have been machinery or perhaps a voice. The German Shepherd's ears perked up at the noise, and its pace quickened. The K9 unit's police dog also showed signs of detecting human presence, confirming they weren't just chasing false hopes. The passage took several turns, each one leading them deeper underground. The air grew noticeably cooler, and the modern lighting system gave way to more hastily installed bulbs strung along the ceiling. The walls here showed signs of recent excavation, with fresh tool marks visible in the rock. Suddenly, the German Shepherd stopped in front of what looked like a solid wall. But the dog's behavior, pawing at the ground and whining softly, suggested otherwise. One of the investigators noticed something odd about the rock face. Unlike the rough-hewn walls around it, this section appeared too smooth, too regular. Careful examination revealed cleverly disguised hinges on one side. It was another hidden door, designed to blend perfectly with the surrounding rock. This one had no visible handle or lock, but a slight gap at the bottom caught the beam of a flashlight. The technical team worked quickly to find a way to open it, discovering a hidden mechanism triggered by pressure plates in the floor. With a soft click and the sound of hydraulics, the false wall swung slowly open, revealing what lay beyond. The room they'd found themselves in was unlike anything else in the complex. It was set up as a makeshift prison cell, but with computer equipment and scientific instruments lining the walls. And there, sitting at a desk covered in papers and looking up in shock at the sudden intrusion, was the missing environmental researcher. The German Shepherd broke free from its handler's grip and bounded forward with a joyful bark. The researcher fell to his knees as his faithful companion reached him, tears streaming down his face as dog and owner were finally reunited. The emotional scene brought a lump to everyone's throat, even the most hardened officers. As medical personnel checked the researcher's condition, he began sharing his story. He'd been forced to continue his work here, analyzing environmental data and helping the criminals understand how to better hide their toxic dumping activities. They had kept him alive because they needed his expertise, but they had made it clear that any refusal to cooperate would have severe consequences. The German Shepherd had been with him the day they were caught. In the chaos of his capture, the dog had managed to escape into the woods. The criminals had been unable to catch it, and apparently unwilling to harm it, they had resorted to keeping the dog tied up near the entrance, regularly providing food and water. Looking around the room, investigators found evidence that would prove crucial in the coming legal battles. The researcher had been secretly documenting everything while pretending to cooperate with his captors. Hidden within his assigned work were detailed records of the criminal operation, including names, dates, and amounts of toxic waste disposed of in the area. The researcher had known his loyal dog would somehow lead help to him. Even during his captivity, he'd heard his captors talking about the dog's constant presence near the mine entrance, how it would never leave the area despite their attempts to chase it away. His faith in his four-legged friend had kept his hope alive during the long months of imprisonment. As they led him out of the mine to waiting medical personnel, the German Shepherd never left his side. The hunter, still at the scene, watched the reunion with a sense of amazement. His ordinary morning hunting trip had led to the rescue of a brave environmental scientist, the discovery of a major criminal operation, and proof that a dog's loyalty truly knows no bounds. 6 months after the discovery in the woods, the hunter sat in a crowded courthouse, watching as justice unfolded. The investigation had grown into one of the largest environmental crime cases in the state's history. The German Shepherd lay quietly at its owner's feet, both of them there to witness the final outcome of their extraordinary story. The evidence found in the underground complex had led to early morning raids on several corporate offices. 12 people were now facing serious charges, including company executives who had orchestrated the illegal dumping scheme. The prosecution had built an airtight case using the researchers' detailed records and the surveillance footage found in the mine. The cleanup operation in the forest was still ongoing. Environmental teams had discovered that the toxic waste had affected a larger area than initially feared, but thanks to the early discovery, they had managed to prevent it from reaching the main water supply. The cost of the cleanup would be paid by the companies involved, along with hefty fines that would fund local environmental restoration projects. The researcher had made a full recovery and was now leading a new environmental protection initiative. His experience had drawn attention to the importance of environmental whistleblowers and the need for better protection of natural resources. He'd been invited to speak at conferences and universities, sharing his story to inspire a new generation of environmental scientists. The hunter had received a special commendation from the state's Environmental Protection Agency. Though he insisted he was just doing what anyone would have done, his careful observation and decision to investigate something unusual had been crucial. He'd begun volunteering with local conservation groups, helping them monitor the forest's recovery and protect its wildlife. But the real hero of the story was the German Shepherd. The dog's unwavering loyalty and intelligence had captured public attention. Local news stations had run stories about the guardian of the forest, showing how the dog had stayed near the mine entrance for months, waiting for someone to notice something was wrong. Animal protection organizations had used the story to highlight the incredible bond between humans and their pets. The forest itself was healing. New regulations and monitoring systems had been put in place to prevent similar environmental crimes. Motion-activated cameras now served a different purpose, tracking wildlife returning to the area. The streams were running clear again, and plants were beginning to grow in places where toxic waste had once seeped into the soil. During breaks in the court proceedings, people would come up to pet the German Shepherd and hear the story firsthand from the researcher. He would always emphasize how his dog's dedication had not only saved his life, but had also exposed a crime that was poisoning the environment. The dog would wag its tail and accept the attention calmly, seeming to understand its role in the bigger picture. The hunter's morning walks in the woods had changed. He still went out with his rifle during hunting season, but he found himself spending more time observing and protecting the forest than hunting in it. He'd developed a deeper appreciation for the delicate balance of nature and the importance of preserving it for future generations. The case had brought about real change. Companies nationwide were facing stricter oversight of their waste disposal practices. Environmental protection laws were being strengthened, and new resources were allocated for monitoring and enforcement. What had started with a dog tied to a tree had grown into a movement for positive change. As the judge prepared to announce the verdicts, the German Shepherd looked up at its owner, tail wagging gently. Their story had reminded everyone that sometimes the most important discoveries come from paying attention to the small things that seem out of place, and that loyalty, whether between humans and their animals or between people and their environment, was a powerful force for good in the world.